Welcome to the DOGE Diaries, diving deep into government efficiency. I'm really excited about today's topic. It feels like we're finally seeing some tangible impacts of open source thinking in the public sector.
Yeah, I'm a bit more skeptical, I guess. Government efficiency always sounds good, but what does it actually mean for the average person? I mean, are we really seeing a benefit, or are we just shifting costs around?
I'm with Otto on this one. I agree the headlines are promising, but is this about genuine efficiency or about flashy tech solutions overshadowing needed bureaucratic reforms? Is it really improving or is it being measured correctly?
But Sarah, look at the Fox News piece, $334 million in improper payment requests identified due to those foul codes. That's real money that was potentially being wasted. It's like finding a leak in a pipe, you fix it, and the water bill goes down. It seems like these open source systems are catching errors the old systems were missing. I think the potential is there, especially with government transparency.
Okay, but here's the thing. Even if they find that money, where's it going? Is it going back into programs that benefit people, or is it just disappearing into some black hole of the budget? And $334 million, I mean, in the grand scheme of government spending, is that really a drop in the bucket?
Right, and the article mentions missing or invalid budget codes. This suggests existing processes aren't being followed or the coding practices are flawed. Why invest in an entirely new system if better training and oversight of the existing one could solve the same problem? I find the lack of that being addressed concerning.
But the TEAS codes, making that a required field for $4.7 trillion in payments, that's a huge deal. I mean, that level of untraceable spending, it's mind-boggling. This new system is designed to track all payments and make it all traceable. How is that not more efficient, especially for future generations?
I guess I need to be convinced that this is a good thing for everyone, and not just some kind of power grab from somewhere else. It just smells of a way to disrupt things.
Yes, and I think there is a real potential for that. When things are shifted around like this with DOGE, it's vital that it improves the existing methods. We need to build on what we've created. But to shift things around like this, I think it is a huge gamble.
Well, look at the opinion piece. It argues that DOGE is instilling fiscal responsibility and challenging the mindset that deficits don't matter. That's a pretty powerful shift, I think.
But what about the human cost? That article about AmeriCorps staff in Knoxville losing their jobs because of DOGE cuts. Those are real people. Are we really saving money if we're throwing people out of work? Is this just a way to fire people?
Exactly. And that's the core of my concern. Efficiency shouldn't come at the expense of essential services or people's livelihoods. It feels rushed. And what about the long-term impact on the communities those AmeriCorps members were serving? Were these volunteers properly trained and not hurting more than they helped?
That is a good point. I hadn't considered the training, but even the AmeriCorps cuts can be reframed. It's about reallocating resources to where they can be most effective. Maybe those programs weren't as impactful as we thought.
That's easy to say when you're not the one losing your job, right? I'm not sure that is something to consider. We need to consider people here.
I agree. It's a bit simplistic to say reallocating resources without acknowledging the disruption and potential harm caused by those cuts. I worry there is too much faith put into these untested DOGE initiatives.
But think about the potential for open source solutions to be more adaptable and responsive to changing needs. The old system has so much red tape. That's always the complaint. With this, we can rapidly adapt.
I still don't see a real utopian future where corporations help countries out, or where a technocracy can actually save real people. It's just moving stuff around. That's what it sounds like.
Adaptability is great in theory, but it requires careful planning and execution. Rushing into open source solutions without robust security protocols or proper training could create more vulnerabilities than it solves. Remember all the stories about government websites getting hacked?
That is true. Security is important.
Yeah.
But isn't the whole point of open source that more eyes are on the code, making it easier to spot vulnerabilities? With more people there, you have greater coverage.
Maybe that's true. I feel like the government isn't so great at spotting things like that. They probably should put more people on it.
That is absolutely true, but it depends on who's looking at the code. Are these qualified security experts or just random people on the internet? Open source doesn't magically guarantee security.
But look at how quickly these things are being identified. We're finding problems faster. Think of it like a bug bounty program. You incentivize people to find flaws, and the system gets stronger.
I like that example. I just don't know if this will all work out in the end. I'm just skeptical of these huge changes. What if it is just for show?
Right, and what's the cost of fixing those flaws? How much is being spent on consultants and developers to implement and maintain these new systems? We're trading one set of costs for another, and it's not clear we're coming out ahead.
I think those costs are an investment in the future. Think of the long-term savings. Reduce fraud, streamline processes, and a more transparent government. The future is here.
I just want to see these savings reach the average person instead of getting lost somewhere in the budget.
Yes, the government could also invest more into training people and the system. Investing is more than simply throwing money at a system and hoping it fixes itself, but creating an ecosystem of growth.
But is the existing system fixable? The opinion piece mentions a mindset in Washington that deficits don't matter. That's a fundamental problem that incremental improvements won't solve.
That's fair. There are some definite flaws that I don't know if can be solved. If we were starting over, I'd be all in. But we're not starting over.
I am concerned if the fundamental values are changing. I think there is an argument that this is a symptom of a larger problem, not a cause.
Let's talk about the article mentioning Trump's tariffs. Is that an example of a DOGE-like approach to international trade, disruptive, but ultimately leading to positive change?
I think of all the things to be disruptive, trade is a bad idea. I don't know. I feel like these actions erode global trust, create instability, and ultimately raise the cost of everything. It's not about big ideas, it's about hurting regular people.
I agree. The tariffs are a great example of how quick fixes can backfire. Disrupting established trade relationships can have unintended consequences, like higher prices for consumers and retaliatory tariffs from other countries.
But the article also mentions companies like Novartis and Honda investing in U.S. manufacturing because of the tariffs. Is it possible that the short-term pain is worth the long-term gain of bringing jobs back to America?
I feel that those companies would have invested here anyway. I am not convinced that tariffs are the reason. Tariffs also disrupt the economy because countries want to retaliate. It causes too much instability.
And even if some companies are investing, what's the net effect? Are the jobs created outweighing the jobs lost due to trade disruptions? It's a complex equation, and I think the tariffs oversimplify it.
I agree that trade is complex. I think it is very hard to measure. So it is hard to make a judgment. I wonder if more transparency to government is how we solve this problem.
Transparency would be great. It is hard to follow where money is going.
Yes, and it could also take a lot more time. I don't think transparency is the problem. There are so many steps in the middle that are not being measured correctly.
Well, what about Trump's order to create a Bitcoin reserve? Is that another example of DOGE-inspired disruption? Is he ahead of his time?
I feel that idea is more complicated. I feel like Bitcoin is a complicated thing to talk about. I feel there are too many scams for it to be something I can get behind. It makes me feel nervous.
Exactly. I think a Bitcoin reserve is a distraction from more pressing issues. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think that this is a waste of government resources.
Maybe not as a primary reserve, but as a hedge against inflation or a way to bypass traditional financial systems. Think of it as a technological investment that will help society. I see its value.
Inflation isn't being fixed. The stock market is fine, but prices are still high.
Right. If you want to hedge against inflation, invest in diversified assets, not a volatile cryptocurrency. I think the entire point is to make it volatile. Or what's the point of investing?
Okay, I get the skepticism. The tech is not quite there yet. But if DOGE is focused on streamlining government, why are there articles about the White House extorting free labor from elite law firms? That seems counterproductive. It is a little unfair. Are we expecting too much here?
Right. That sounds like they are trying to use loopholes. It's just not something I can support.
Definitely not streamlined. That's a classic example of power consolidating, not efficiency improving. It is also a little corrupt. But this has been a long-term problem.
Okay, so it looks like DOGE may have some problems to solve. I still see potential. But these are some important problems we need to keep discussing. It's vital to our society.
Yes. I hope these issues are fixed. But it is important to discuss. Even more importantly, to listen. Things need to get better.
Exactly. Thank you both for discussing these items. I learned a lot about the way things are going and the issues with the plans.